Welcome to the Courage to Be podcast with Tanya Vasallo. Before we get into this episode, I want to share with you that I'm on a mission to close the gender gap in the podcasting world so that more and more women's voices are heard. If you feel that this is something you value too, then please rate, review, and share the podcast. And in exchange, and as my way to say thank you to you, I want to give you free access to my signature course called Manifesting Abundance, which typically sells for $997. All you have to do to gain access is leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, take a snapshot of it, and send it to help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with access to the course. Welcome back to the Courage to Be, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And we have Jennifer Conaway with us today. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. It's so exciting.
I know we go back a while and we haven't seen each other for a little. So I'm excited to interview you and get to hear your story and have you share with our audience. So one of the things that stands out to me with your story is the combination of spirituality and entrepreneurship. And so it's almost like those two words shouldn't go together, but I would love to hear from you sharing with our audience what it is that you do and how have those words come together for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And even the business side of things, the entrepreneurship side of things didn't come together for me until I finally went to work in a large Fortune 100. And they gave me surveys to do and all this data to play with. And I was just not a numbers girl. And so I was a little intimidated, but finally figured it out and realized like the power that numbers can have in a business. When you look at your numbers, they can shift an entire corporation, which is really what got me started thinking about there must be a way to use this that I just haven't figured out yet. And then in that whole process, I started learning about my own spirituality and the gifts that I had from the universe, and, became more and more of a square peg that they were trying to jam into a round hole in corporate, and eventually thought, I've got to get out of here. I can't do this anymore. And started my own business on a whim and a prayer. And with zero, I had no idea what I was doing. It was so bad.
And what was the business?
It was like a simple, I'm like, I'm going to be a life coach like everybody else. This was 25 years ago almost now. And at that time, everybody's like, let's just jump in and do this. And I had no idea what we were doing, but I learned so much. Like I was forced to learn so much. And so that's where the business side of this really came in for me. And then as I started working with one of the biggest online marketers in the country, I started really getting into my spiritual side and understanding what it is that my intuition is telling me and how I specifically communicate with the universe and what my spiritual values are, so how do I look at nature? How do I look at connection with other humans? What does it mean to me to be heart-led and to have a purpose that I feel like is bigger than myself and that I need to get out there in a different way? And that's when that kind of purpose piece got completely overwhelming. That's when I said, I need to do this business thing for myself again. I need to leave these beautiful entrepreneurs that I've been working with and start my own business and really integrate the magic that we all have within us, that is our spiritual side, with the 3D realities of how businesses work on this plane and in this planet. And that's where the connection came together for me.
Wow. So you worked with this online marketer for a while. So you started your own business, then you worked with the online marketer, and then you went back to it once all the alignment, I guess, fell into place, right? And so what was different the second time when you went to go into your business on your own, like instead of for someone else? versus the first time?
Yeah. The second time was really, I really do feel a purpose calling. I had been able to work with spiritual entrepreneurs in, between the two business. And the thing I saw consistently was that spiritual entrepreneurs really didn't want to get into the business side of a business. Very difficult for them to look at traditional marketing and feel good about it, for them to get into the data, the numbers behind social media and, event attendance and how many people you're bringing in versus how many discovery calls you're having. It was really difficult for them. And there's a part of me that really understands that, because it's not a simple thing if you're not used to it, if you don't have any training in it, if you don't have any business background. And because it can feel really icky if it's not done with heart. And that's where I started to see that I was different from other people, is that I was looking at the traditional marketing and saying, all right, how can we do this from a place of, my heart, and actually reaching out to people and saying, I want to help you do the best that you can do in your business. And I don't want it to feel icky. I want you to feel really authentic as you're growing your business. I want you to feel really authentic about the social media that you're putting up. When you're looking at your numbers and making shifts, I don't just want to look at those shifts from the we're going to change this because the algorithm says we have to. I want to look at it from, the algorithm is saying that, but is there also a connection here that we can make on a heart level that means that we don't necessarily have to focus solely on the algorithm? So it was really all about the purpose. Now it's all about entwining those two things, whereas before it just wasn't. It was just, I got to do something.
And so then you found your own purpose within it and wanting to help the people that you, like you said, the spiritual entrepreneurs with their struggle, the marketing, the sales, the numbers, like the data, let's say, in a way. And so now, how do you integrate that for them, or how do you help them with that? Do you come in and do the numbers with them, or do you, like, what does it look like working with Jennifer?
Yeah, good question. In the beginning, when I work with somebody, I love to get my hands a little bit dirty, to get in there and, find out what your numbers actually are, to help you understand what's your open rate versus your click rate. What are your numbers telling you for Instagram, or what are they telling you about your marketing and your, how well your sales page is converting? Because I think there is some of that you do need to understand. But then I also want to really understand the individual. So, what is it that drives you? What are your spiritual values? How do they manifest in your business? How does that impact the way your business shifts and changes and moves? And now that we have those two pieces of information, how can we get them to play together? It's like finding the way to color outside of the lines, right? And so, a simple example of that is every day I take a walk. It is my walking meditation. It's where I connect with the universe. I get grounded. I see my spirit animal all the time when I'm out for a walk. But if I don't have the opportunity to do that every day, I really start to feel a little bit disconnected and I can't serve the way I would like to. So my day is structured so that I have that time every day. And how many times as entrepreneurs have we been told, well, you have to be productive all day. You've got to be productive, getting things done. That means you're writing content, you're talking to a client, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if I don't have that time, I'm not productive. I'm not the best I can be for myself or for my clients. So I've had to redefine what productivity looks like to me, what it means to me. And, I end up doing the same thing for my clients, some of who are like, if I don't get the meditation time in the morning or the yoga practice or time to pull the tarot cards so I can check to make sure I'm going the right direction. All of those things impact your productivity, and it should be okay for them to be part of your daily productivity.
Let's talk more about that. It's almost like you're giving them permission too of just connecting with that side, of like like you're saying, it's okay. It's okay to be able to meditate. It's because it's going to bring more to the
Mhm.
business versus running away from it. Like I don't have time from it. What are some of the other practices that you do that keep you grounded, and productive and in your spiritual place? Like what are some of your daily practices, Jennifer?
Yeah. So one of the things I do, and I consider this a daily practice because of how critical it is to making sure I get it done. For me, social media has been a learning journey. I have gone from really despising it to seeing it sort of as a partner. But I would much rather be in my yard and connecting with nature that way than connecting with people on social media. Well, these days you have to be on social media. So one of the first things, well, the first thing that I do when I wake up in the morning is I actually get on social media. And I know that everybody will tell you, don't get on social first thing in the morning, it'll wreck your day. For me, getting on social media and spending 2 hours connecting with people that are positive, putting positive information out there, sharing in that way, that is actually a practice for me that kind of drives my day. And then I know that's done. I've connected with people, all over the world in that time already. So that's one of the things I do. The walking I do, I'm a big pendulum person. I know it's not particularly sexy, but my pendulum and I go places, and I'll sit outside and just, if I'm a little bit unsure, check something. I'm also big about just getting quiet and sitting and connecting with myself, but it means that you have to give yourself permission to do that, to slow down long enough to do that. And I think the other thing that, I don't know if you would consider it a spiritual practice, but it's an integral practice. When I'm creating project plans to get things completed, I build in that spiritual time I need to get grounded, get clear, get focused before I look at marketing copy. The time I need to connect with the universe before I make my videos. So much of this is about intention and consciously doing the things you need to do rather than blindly running through your day because somebody says that you have all these things you have to do.
That is so important of just noticing that. So when you're saying intention and consciousness, are you applying it to everything that you're doing throughout the day or like just to projects, or how are you bringing intention and consciousness?
I really try to apply it to everything I do. Even, so I had some copy I was supposed to write this morning, right? And I sat down to do it. And I was like, oh, I'm so restless. I can't focus. I can't. So, sure, I could have just forced myself to sit there and do it. And it would have been okay. The copy would have been fine. But staying conscious to how my body feels in that moment, it was so obvious to me that I need to get up and move and do something and kind of expel some energy, give myself a way to connect with myself on a deeper level. And that's what I did. I actually went outside and did some gardening in the vegetables, came back in, and then I was grounded and I was at peace. And now I can write the copy. So it's consciously being aware of where your body is, how your body feels, how your mind feels. And, sometimes I can sit down for 3 or 4 hours and get things done, and it's easy, right? And other times I get partway through that and I'm like, oh, something's just not right. And it's my responsibility to figure out what's not right, what's not sitting quite the way it should.
This sounds great. And I think it's important to be able to pay attention and to have that awareness. And to me, it sounds like it's awareness combined with permission. Like you're giving yourself permission to do things opposite than, what's expected. And I put that with air quotes. Let's take a quick pause and we'll come back into dissecting this. Hi there, I have something really cool for you. I want to give you free access to my signature course called Manifesting Abundance, which typically sells for $997. You can check out all the details in the show notes. All you have to do to gain access is leave me a review on Apple Podcast, take a snapshot of it, and send it to help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with access to the course. You can also find other free goodies in the show notes. Go check them out. So yes, we were talking about your ability of being aware and then taking that awareness and giving yourself permission, Jennifer. Like you were saying this morning that you had to write copy, but you're like, I need to get energy out. And first you were aware, then you gave yourself permission. You went out, you did what you had to do, and then you come back and you're going to be more productive. But what do you say? I mean, this is a hard thing. It's not as easy as it sounds. Like with when you even just said earlier, like I wake up and the first thing I do is I spend 2 hours on social media. Oh my God, people would cringe. But it's like, well, that's what works for her, and that's part of her practice. So what would you say to those people that are just like, life is just too busy, like we have kids, we have, you know, things to do, places to take the kids, errands to run, businesses to run, or jobs to go to. How can we navigate that awareness and give ourselves permission? That's for the busy person that can never carve out the time to become aware and seeing what they need. And on the flip side, how can the person that's always like, well, I'm just listening to my body and I need to rest 3 days in a row and then don't do anything, like how do we find that balance? And what are some tips that you would give both sides?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was most definitely a type A for 90% of my life. I was running, doing the thing that everybody said that you need to do. And I also had migraines, 15 or 18 days out of a month, and was miserable and unhappy. And it occurred to me, I have got to do something different. And it was that realization that nobody's going to do it for me. Nobody is going to, from outside, is actually going to come and say, I give you permission to completely shift your life the way you want it to be. Because at the end of the day, you're a sovereign being. You have the ability to make decisions all on your own. It doesn't have to look the way anybody else says it should look. And I realize that requires a certain level of courage, a level of self-reflection and understanding that you're absolutely right. It might not feel like you have time, especially when you're running the kids here and there and the dogs are barking in the background. But, and I will say, in all honesty, there are days when I'm just like, oh, I've got so much I've got to do. Matter of fact, Saturday was one of them. I've got so much I have to do. I have all these things. I have a lunch coming up. I've got all this stuff to do. I've got all these errands to run, and I'm never going to get it done. And I'm putting all this pressure on myself. And the next thing I know, I've got this migraine. And I was just like, what are you doing? What are you doing to yourself? Because now I'm not able to show up for myself. I'm not able to show up for my husband. We had a graduation party for a good friend. I'm not able to show up for him, for the dogs, the way I would like to. So I think it's about giving yourself permission to be your best self in every situation. And that doesn't mean it's going to look like anybody else. And that means being honest with yourself. If you, like me, if you get chronic migraines, if you have some other thing that impacts your life, being able to say, you know what, that's okay. I'm going to take control of my life. And this is what I can do. And this is what I can't do. And yep, I can hear the moms sitting in the carpool line saying, oh, dear God, I just don't have time. I don't know. Here's the thing that I figured out. And I was really bad at this for a long time. But those 3 minutes when you're sitting in that carpool line, you can either be stressing about the grocery list or writing the grocery list, or you can close your eyes, maybe not close your eyes if you have to drive, but you know, but go a little bit inside and ask yourself, what can I do to just calm right now, to give myself permission to relax a little bit, to breathe a little bit, And I think, there's, again, it's another one of those things. There's so much pressure to don't let your kids have X amount of screen time, this, that, and the other. But if the balance is, I need 20 minutes to go sit outside, just be with myself. And that means that the kids are going to have 20 minutes of screen time. Well, what version of you comes back from that 20 minutes of time with yourself? It's a more connected, more compassionate, more empathetic version of yourself. The kids will get over the extra 20 minutes of screen time because now mom is more connected. Now mom can do whatever she needs to do in 10 minutes instead of it taking her an hour and a half. And you have time for the kids. It's not easy. I work really hard for the life that I have. And I was talking to my husband about it this weekend, saying, I would love to spend that time at the nursery with you this weekend, the plant nursery. But I've got these other things I need to do. So there are trade-offs. But the more I choose myself, the more I'm actually choosing everybody around me.
That's beautifully said. And it's such a reminder. The more I choose myself, it's so hard for us as women. And so there's a couple things I want to go deeper into. I guess the first one would be, it's just reminding me there's two podcasts. One I just recorded today with Colleen Cashman. I don't know what the title will be. So if you're listening to this, and she was talking similar to what you're saying right now, too, almost like she was suffering with this perfectionism and having to do it all right, and just she talked about awareness, of just being aware, like you're saying, like if you're moving fast and you're wanting to take that, you need that breath, you need to become aware, take that breath, and slow down. It's usually you need the opposite of what you think you're needing, like, oh, I don't have time. So definitely listen. If you're listening to the podcast right now, to this episode, go and listen to Colleen's episode too. And it's also reminding me, Jennifer, and this is where I wanted to ask you, there's another episode with Kate and Gu. I think it's like episode in the 30s, 36 or something like that, about discovering the secrets of menstrual cycle and working with our menstrual cycle versus against it. I feel like you're coming from a different perspective of like connecting with your spiritual side, but she also talks about our cycles. As women, we, as a culture, the systems have been set up for patriarchy. Men's cycle in 24 hours, they have their peaks, their valleys, they need their naps. And so their cycles are 24-hour cycles. And that's why we have day works that are 9 to 5, in a day cycle. Women, we cycle in 28 days. And so it's reminding me, like you're saying in that particular episode, how she was Thanksgiving time and she knew it was that time of the month where it was more introspective. I think it was during her period part of the cycle. And she asked the whole family, she's like, can we celebrate Thanksgiving next week instead of this week? Because why do we have to follow, like it falls on this date, but I'm going to be a better person if we celebrate next week, because I will have a lot more energy to give the kids, give the nieces and nephews. You'll all be happier to be around me next week versus this week. And so I love that you're touching on all of this with giving ourselves permission of being and doing whatever it is that we need and advocating. What I'm hearing you say, Jennifer, with all of this is you have to advocate for yourself. Like when you were having these migraines and you're type A and you're going like, no one's going to come and save you. No one's going to come and give you that permission slip. Like you have to advocate for yourself. So my question now, you've seen the journey, you've shifted throughout it. Obviously, I'm guessing it's work in progress. Maybe sometimes you revert to old moments. And you said that you're type A personality. How does that fit in now that you've found this way of being? Do you consider yourself still type A and do everything and give everything? Or are you more relaxed? Are you more, do you give yourself more permission? Like, what does that look like?
I think I definitely give myself more permission. I'm still wired type A to be doing things and to be busy, but I've redefined what that being busy means or what being type A means. Right. I think the common definition is that means that you're literally constantly running, constantly doing work. You're probably working 10 or 12-hour days. It's all about let's get the money, let's get the next promotion, the next, right? But now for me, it's my time is still filled, but I'm filling it with things that nourish me. So I'm filling it, not necessarily with working, pushing, but with spending an hour cross stitching, because for me, that's another one of the things that just gives my mind such peace, because I focus on something else completely. I'm not thinking about quote work. I'm not thinking about the family or the husband. I'm thinking about something that's completely separate that gives me peace, and I'm still doing something. So I think I've redefined type A. Type A is, yes, doing the things I need to do for the business, doing the things I need to do to take care of the family and to take care of my parents, but it's also doing the things I need to do to take care of myself so that I can show up strongly for my parents when they need help, so that I can show up really well for the clients that are coming to me, because I want all those people to get the best of me. And, I think about this concept of freedom and being sovereign, and we're coming up on elections. So, it's all of that freedom is coming up all the time. But in so many ways, we give up our freedoms for what the tradition says we should be doing. And advocating for yourself and letting the people around you know, this is why I'm taking the time. This is why I'm spending the time sitting in a room with a needle that you guys think is completely nuts right now. But this is why it's important. I think sharing that is critical, because we're actually being a leader to everybody around us that's paying attention. And you never know who's paying attention. It could be the kids, it could be the person down the street that you talk to, twice a year. But yeah, I think it's advocating yourself, and you end up showing up and leading in a different way.
Yes, this is fascinating because I just looked up online the exact definition of type A personality. And so let's dissect this together, Jennifer, because I think there's some more things to go deeper with this, because I consider myself in that category too. So type A personality is very driven to succeed, hard worker, very competitive, able to work well under pressure, goal-oriented, organized. And, like I go through all those boxes and I'm like, tick, 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 check, check, check. I have all of them. Would you say, though, that even though you still see yourself as a type A, that you're very driven to succeed, but maybe it's redefining what success means? A very hard worker, what does that mean? Like you were comparing it with being busy, being able to work well under pressure, or goal oriented, like have the goals shifted now that you have this awareness and you've given yourself permission? Let's go deeper into that.
Yeah, I think that's a good realization, is that the goals have shifted. And whereas before it really was, the goal is to say that I got everything on my list done today. Now the goal, when you've got a list of like 10 things and you're trying to get them all done in the day because you're driven, sometimes that means that some of them aren't done as well as you want them to. And for perfectionists, I was a perfectionist too. My gosh, that's stressful. Oh my word, when you know you got it done, but it could be better, or you are going to go back to it after the kids get in bed. That's so stressful. And so, yeah, it's redefining what does it look like to get that list finished. And honestly, is it really a list that needs to get finished entirely, or is that a imagined deadline? Right? So I know I'm a big one for imagined deadlines, and we even see this in marketing, but yeah, it's tough to shift that, because every day you've got all of these tasks that you want to get finished, and to have to move a task to the next day doesn't always feel good. But I think I have to go back and ask myself, okay, so the 5 things that I got done, how do I feel about them? Are they perfect? No. Are they way more than good enough? Yes. And, it's the end of the day and I'm not exhausted. And that's a good thing. I'm fulfilled,
Yeah,
but I'm not exhausted.
that's good. That goes back to awareness, like you were saying. Do you think that type A's that we kind of go in that direction because we're trying to avoid feeling something or stopping? Like, has that
Oh,
shifted for you?
that's absolutely shifted. And I know, like how many other things it goes back to our upbringing, where it was you had to get all of these things done every day. You were trying to please somebody, whether it's your parents or whatever. So it just, it really knocks that into us about how important it is to get all these things done. But I think, you ask a good question with somebody that is very, very spiritual and really doesn't have that drive, doesn't have that list, or they may have the list, but they don't actually have any interest in looking at it. And they're like, well, I need to go rest for 3 days. And I say that with a little bit of tone, and I realize that. But I also think you have a responsibility to yourself. Yes. You also have a responsibility to everybody else that you're impacting, and specifically related to a business. I had a client that was very, very much like this, and we worked together for a few years, and she's doing amazing now. But she was very much, I just need. And she would disappear for 3 days. When you look at a business environment, you can't have the person who is driving the business or driving the bus disappear for 3 days when you're in the middle of doing tasks that run the business every day. That doesn't mean that she doesn't get to meet her needs. That means that instead of taking 3 days, maybe she takes a day, and maybe she takes a day a week later, or you give somebody else within the company or somebody you're working with permission to make the decisions, to review the copy, to whatever it is that you're not in a space to do right now. So it's a different version of responsibility, right? It involves delegation, it involves understanding your impacts, not just to yourself, but to the company, to your team members, to your clients. It's just like to your kids, right? If it would be lovely, I'm sure, for a mom to say, I'm going to just disappear for 3 days, but she can't do that and leave the kids to their own devices, or, to dad. And you can't just do that. So she's got a slightly different problem in that she feels like she cannot get away, but that's her opportunity to take a half an hour, to take the 5 minutes while she's in the carpool line. So I think in a perfect world, would we just be able to step away, take care of ourselves whenever we need to? Sure. But we're not there. We live in a 3D world. We live in a world where not everything is as heart-led as we would like it to be, and where we don't all communicate well. So you have to be able to balance that responsibility for yourself with the responsibility for everybody else. And if you've got a business like the client I was talking about, then you have to be able to balance the responsibility for yourself with the responsibility for the business.
Or with family, and in the cases of people that have family, you add that into the mix. And it sounds to me like it's baby steps, and just start with awareness, give yourself permission. and doing these things versus just burning out, like you said, with this client taking 3 days off. And it's like, well, wait a minute, you went from like delivering, and then now you're burnt out and you can't give of yourself. And that's where I go back to the question of, do you think that let me get myself busy, let me get myself, goal oriented, everything's towards success for the family, for the business, whatever it is, but just going back to these qualities. I work hard, because there's a fear of some sort underneath. Like as I self-analyze, I'm like, I can come across sometimes like controlling, type A, like everything has to be into place. And I know that that's an insecurity or fear of not trusting, like not trusting in the higher powers and the universe, So do you feel that way too, Jennifer? Because I tend to see all of those that pride themselves, and I put myself in that box of type A. I'm type A. Look at, like I'm such hard worker. I succeed. I'm goal oriented, like I'm organized. I do all these things. But is it trying to cover some type of insecurity? Is it trying to cover some type of fear? Is it, like, do you feel that way too? Because I know for me it is. And sometimes I have to kind of like open myself up and give myself permission and just say, you know what? Today I'm just going to be. And if the emotions bubble up and I start crying because I've been suppressing by doing, going. That's my question, where I'm seeing it with the type A, since it's two type A's here talking to each other. Like, do you feel that? And because you've been able to connect more with that spiritual side. And I think once you start scratching at that surface of that spiritual side, some wonderful things start opening up. And that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it's very true. There is a lot of, if I don't control this, if I don't get this thing done the way I think it needs to be done, then something is going to fall apart. Most of the time, I didn't even know, I could never tell you what it was that was going to fall apart, but something was going to fall apart. Something wasn't going to be right. And it's partly about trust. You have been let down by somebody or multiple people in different situations. So you feel like the only one that can get it done to what is a satisfactory level is yourself. And that's a ton of pressure that you put on yourself. That's an incredible amount of pressure. When you're trying to run a family or run your business, it's tremendous. And it comes out as controlling. It comes out as micromanaging and, pushing not just yourself, but everybody else to be perfect all the time. And you really don't give yourself, you also don't give yourself space to innovate in that time. Because when you're constantly pushing that rock uphill, there's no space to innovate. There's no space to try something different. There's no space to breathe. And yet for a lot of us, that's so much safer than, giving it to somebody else to do, or taking the time to find a different way to do it, because that all involves uncertainty. And, when there's uncertainty, then fear kicks in. And when I'm scared of everything falling apart, or when I'm scared of somebody not getting it done, and that comes to the definition of like, they're not going to do it right. Well, the reality is they're not going to do it your way, but it's going to get done. So I have had to learn to let things go and let somebody else do it their way, and let it not be my version of perfect, or even, my idea of the order that things should get done. I mean, my God, is that basic, right? Oh, I would do A, B, and C. They did C, F, and A. Oh, my word. Well, no, the sky is not going to fall. Kind of feels like it will, but it doesn't. And
I
that's
love it.
It's hard. I mean, it is hard to learn that. And it's something that I have to learn over and over and over again. There was things I do every day. This morning, had a list of things that my VA was working on, and he's going through things, and he had a problem with something, and he's like, well, it's going to take me a couple of days to finish that now. And I'm thinking, oh, do I really want, well, maybe I can do it. I can do it, right? Because I don't want it to take a couple of days. I wanted it done like 20 minutes ago. But so I really have to pull myself back and say, okay, is this really going to harm anything? He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't, you hired him to help you out. So now you're going to pick it up and do it? No, but it's hard. It's that awareness. It's that permission to let somebody else be their best self too. And that's a struggle. I mean, the spiritual journey is constant. And every time I think I have a piece figured out, something else pops up and reminds me that I don't. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not just the woo-woo sitting on the mountain. It's like you said, the willingness to give up fear, to let go of fear, willingness to trust somebody else, willingness to believe that somebody else actually has your best interest at heart, even though it may not look or feel the way you want it to. But I think that's all part of the journey. And when you allow yourself to go through those things, and even to share it vulnerably with a partner, with your kids, with your social media following, you're actually giving people the gift of seeing an authentic you, and also recognizing that they're not alone.
Yeah, that's so true. And thank you for sharing honestly too, like, because I feel like we're both, on that boat. And for me, it's on a daily basis of trusting others, but also trusting the universe and just knowing that things will unfold in the right way. And it was funny that you were saying, like things have to be done in a certain order. It's reminding me of one of my mentors, Louise Hay. She used to say, did you know there's over 250 ways to load the dishwasher? And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, no, there's not. Maybe there's like 5, 10. My husband has his way. I have my way. My daughter would have her way. But there's no way that there's over 200. But it makes sense. There is. But we tend to think that our way is the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such an invitation to pay attention, to be aware, to connect with our spiritual side, like you're saying, Jennifer. So thank you for bringing that up in conversation. This has been fabulous. So tell our listeners, where can they find you?
So I'm hopefully pretty easy to find, but a good place to find me is on Instagram under CBA Strategy. The business name is Conscious Business Answers, because I believe, like we've been talking, if we're paying attention, we can consciously create a business that we really love. So you can find me under CBA Strategy on Instagram. I'm playing a little bit on TikTok there. And also consciousbusinessanswers.com is the website.
Awesome. Thank you. And one of my favorite questions that I like to end the podcast with is, what can our listeners do to live a life with more courage?
Be you. Live out loud. The thing that you don't want to share, the thing that you think makes you strange, weird, different from everybody else, that's the thing that we want to see. It's the thing that makes you the beautiful you. And share.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. This was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been so much fun. It's so good to catch up and play this way.
Thanks. Hi there. I have something really cool for you. I want to give you free access to my signature course called Manifesting Abundance, which typically sells for $997. You can check out all the details in the show notes, and all you have to do to gain access is leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, take a snapshot of it, and send it to help.thecouragetobe@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with access to the course.